Yes. Haha. Yes. Welcome in. Ha. Ha. Ha ha. Jackson, you have the Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Sports Business Review. And then John Denton of MLB.com is booked on this program at 10:15.
He is indeed, Tim.
I'm going to stand over the line of scrimmage on a step stool and look at the defense, and I'm going to call an audible. Because I see my guy, Stephen A. Smith, number one, is wearing a canary yellow jumpsuit today. And they are debating whether or not if Dak is that dude. And I would like to spend the next hour debating whether or not Dak is that dude. So let John Denton know we're not available today. Let the Angry Beaver know that, sorry, we'll double up tomorrow. But today on Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota, we're going to discuss whether or not Dak is that dude. And I will yell at you, and I will take the opposite stance of whatever you take. So let's do it.
All right. I do believe that Dak Prescott is not that dude.
Nice.
I think that the Cowboys, they got a great wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb.
Nice
they have
take.
I like that Tony Pollard in the backfield. He can catch the passes. He can run the ball. Yes, Pollard. And, I think they have a Micah Parsons in that defense is very, very sound. And so I think the reason that they haven't jumped over the hump is Dak just not being that dude. I like Dak Prescott. Seems like a wonderful guy. This is nothing personal.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sure if he's that dude.
So you say Dak is not that dude.
If I had to officially submit, I would say he's not that dude. But I'll also say that there's only a handful of quarterbacks in the NFL who are that dude.
Name the dudes.
Jalen Hurts is that dude. Joe Burrow is that dude. Patrick Mahomes is that dude. Josh Allen is that dude. Justin Herbert is that dude. The list kind of ends there.
Really? I feel like we're missing a dude.
Maybe someone could text it in, but I can't think of anyone.
Name that dude.
Trevor Lawrence, is he that dude? We haven't seen enough.
Dak sucks, and so does Stephen A. All right, I'm going to carry over the discussion, but first I understand Stephen Wildwood, who claims he was absolutely censored by either you or Marsh, left a mic drop. And to make sure that we get his mic drop in, I want to pivot off of is Dak that dude, which is a hot topic, and hear what Steve has to say.
All right, he has sent in a mic drop.
Okay.
I haven't heard it.
Oh, this is high. This is kind of going into.
I know the dump button's right there.
All right.
I'll take the heat.
Lamar Jackson, by the way.
Oh yeah, good call.
You're not going to re-sign these players. You might as well get something for them.
Stop it! Your trading partner is the Toronto Blue Jays? The exchange rate with Canada sucks! Plus, they used a metric system. Nice work, Bowtie. Triple sticks. Here's a list of things to do. A, fire Marble. 2, fire Bowtie and his puppet Pinocchio. 3, hire a real manager, a real general manager, and spend some damn money on some players who can win us a World Series. It's been 12 years, you jackass. Tired of it.
Wow, passionate. You know, you could tell he was starting to see stars toward the end there. But I think a lot of people would agree with the content.
Right.
Maybe you don't share the ire.
Mm-hmm.
But agree with the content. And I didn't even think about the exchange rate.
Yeah, it's something you got to think of the metric system. And also, are they doing Fahrenheit or Celsius over there in Canada? Because Celsius is dumb.
Wow, another take. I thought is Dak that dude was going to carry us today.
No.
Celsius is dumb has entered the chat.
I get the idea 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling, but it's not exact enough.
What a sad person. Go touch grass, idiot. That's from the 314.
Yeah. Also, the Pinocchio he was referring to, Gersh, will be on BK and Ferrari at 11:30.
Oh, how about that? There it is. Maybe they can wire Steve in.
That would be great.
And I hate the Ravens. I believe that's in reference to you leaving Lamar Jackson off.
Yeah, that's a good call. Lamar Jackson is absolutely that dude. Watch out for a little MVP season coming from Lamar Jackson this year.
John Denton with us at 10:15, and we have the Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Sports Business Review, which I'm looking forward to. I like the sports business questions. Jackson, why don't we go to one of them right now? Because what winds up happening is John Denton's going to say something, and then I'm going to all of a sudden it'll be the bright, shiny object, and the next thing we know, it's like 10:58. I'll go, well, I guess we ought to do the Angry Beaver sports business. I don't want to do that.
No, I hear you. That's no problem. I can give you one right now, Tim, for the Little Piddles Sports Business Newsletter presented to you by the Angry Beaver. Mention Piddles for $5 off any pizza. Let's go with something that I saw you post yesterday on the TMA fan page.
It's on Facebook. You ought to join it. 7,100, 7,200 wonderful friends of the feather in there.
Yep.
And we have a few hundred in the queue, and Jackson is the admin who won't let them in.
Yeah, well, make sure you're on your profile picture, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
The ACC is a conference most notably known for its basketball prowess, featuring schools like Duke, UNC, UVA, Wake Forest, and more. And on the football side, has been dominated by the two-headed monster of Clemson and Florida State. Well, Tim, Florida State is not pleased with the ACC's direction in their school.
Well, they don't like the revenue sharing, Peter.
Yeah, as their school president stated yesterday that they have to seriously consider leaving the ACC. Conference realignment in college sports has seriously broke my brain, as I truly don't know how all this plays out. Is everyone just going to join the SEC? Are conferences, as we know it, going to be a thing of the past in the coming years?
I think they will be a thing of the past within a decade. I do. I think they will eventually break away from the NCAA.
Oh,
I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's going deep.
I don't really. I don't. I mean, if you'd like to wager, I'll wager. Actually,
It's not something I like to wager on, but I would like to hear.
I probably will have to contact you from Jupiter, Florida, in 10 years to circle back.
No doubt. Hey, I can come visit.
But yeah, I'd be happy to post that one. But yeah, the conferences I think are clearly forming two super conferences, and the Pac-12 is in the midst of breaking up. Big Ten, per ESPN this morning, talking with Oregon and Washington about joining them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, did you not know that?
No.
Yeah. I was going to get into that on TMA, but we had to go through Iggy and whether or not this In-N-Out burger was really iced on a plane from Las Vegas in 2013, and so we spent a couple hours on that.
Right.
But yeah, the Big Ten's begun exploratory discussions about possible additions, and per ESPN, the discussions are centered on Washington and Oregon. So there you go.
Wow.
So you could have a showdown between Rutgers and the Huskies as they fly 7 hours to see each other.
How about Rutgers basketball going? How about a Tuesday matchup at UCLA? Go home to New Jersey and host the Huskies.
I like that.
From UW. Like that is, I mean, just in fuel costs alone.
Yeah, you got to run that P&L and expand those expenses on travel. So I do think that this is going to implode if you don't consider it already to be an implosion. One of the theories, and this is more from the anti-Missouri fans that like to try to rev up Missouri fans, is the SEC will get to a point where they'll kick Missouri out and then welcome like Florida State and Clemson or something along those lines and say, well, there's no more room at the end and Missouri and whomever else has to go away. I just don't really see that being particularly likely. I have zero interest in the Big 12.
No thanks.
Back in the day, I really was intrigued by Missouri and the Big Ten. This is pre-SEC discussions because I feel like that one would have made sense. But now what used to, quote, make sense is clearly out the window because what made sense was more rooted in geography. And now geography goes out the window, and it's about money and who's got the power. And right now the power is dictated by a football program's, relatively speaking, recent success. So had Gary Pinkel not turned things around in Columbia, I don't know if Missouri would have gotten the invitation to the SEC to begin play there in 2012.
Yeah, they joined. It was them and Texas A&M that joined at the same time.
And that was when Nebraska and Colorado went to their respective Big Ten and Pac-12, and that was because the programs in the Big 12 were frustrated with Texas and the Longhorn Network. That was really the impetus for the whole thing. As it stands right now, what I thought was unique, and again, this goes back to sports business, is Florida State may be comfortable not winning the SEC, whereas there's an easier path to winning the conference in the ACC, but you get more money from the television package in the SEC, and that is where the money is, and that is why they are making their case. I don't know, is the SEC going to have Florida State, Miami, and Clemson?
It's just going to be the entire
bring
South.
on Duke and North Carolina? How would you like that for college basketball? How would you like it if Duke were in Columbia, Missouri, and then the next 3 days later, there's Kentucky at Columbia, Missouri. Yeah. Oh, you'd moved down to Columbia, Missouri.
All those hand motions and smiling really is throwing me off. Yeah, I mean, that would be wild, and count me in because I would love to go see a game at Cameron Indoor, especially if the Mizzou Tigers could go take down the Blue Devils. Having said that, I could see conference realignment, everything going crazy, conferences folding up, but like if you're the SEC, like, do you just become your own thing? Like at a certain point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to break away from the NCAA.
Detach from the NCAA because
I think it'll be closer to the NFL.
Yeah.
I really do. I think which may sound exaggerated in the moment, but I do think that that's where it's going to go because it's essentially going that way anyway.
Right.
Except there isn't a salary cap, and so you have
it's a Wild West.
The Roll Tides and, Bulldogs in a spot where they can kind of run things. But it may wind up being advantageous for Missouri with NIL and Missouri's NIL rules.
That question's coming later.
Oh, wow.
I'm omnipotent.
Boy, this, I don't know if that was the proper use of that word.
Omnipresent?
I mean, I guess
I'm here.
You are on the show.
I'm here.
What was that? Were you doing like Jay Farrow? What was that?
That was Travis Kelce doing Patrick Mahomes. Because
that's pretty good.
He was doing.
Now I enjoy it. Now I've been rewarded.
Yeah, Mahomes was mic'd up saying "I'm here," and then they did it with Kermit the Frog over it, and it's really funny.
That's pretty good.
I'm here.
All right, we got John Denton on the other side of the break. We'll talk Cardinal trade deadline. I'm not really interested in talking about the games, honestly.
The 4 outfielders, 4 home runs. Tim, how do you like me now?
Yeah, I don't know. That's not where I am. But I will talk trade deadline and offseason. That's what interests me. So if that interests you, that's what we're going to talk about. Next with John Denton of MLB.com here on Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN. You know, Jackson, in the commercial break, I went to that TMA fan page on Facebook, admin section, where you're not letting people in, like you censor Stephen Wildwood's mic drops as well.
It's my thing. Yeah, I'm power hungry.
Yeah, it's like a Kim Jong-un deal going on here, I've noticed. Yeah. And boy, a bunch of new requests from our friends here on Balloon Party.
Love to see it. Yeah.
Welcome. Come on in. The water's warm. It's great to see. Come on in. The water is warm. TMA fan page on Facebook. Wonderful discussions going on. We have the Little Piddles Angry Beaver Sports Business Review
Newsletter.
Coming up. We've already touched on one question regarding conferences just essentially evaporating at some point. And now it's time for some trade deadline review with John Denton of MLB.com. Morning, John.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I am wonderful, sir. How are you? We haven't talked in a couple weeks, and I always look forward to talking it over.
Yeah, we made it through the trade deadline, still alive and kicking. So let's play out the string now.
Yeah, boy, that sums it up nicely. That's going to be a lot of what it is, really, until the off season. That's where things will ramp up, unless the Cardinals can rattle off another big winning streak like in 2021. So, with that all said, anything over the last, I guess at this point we can say week, that's when the deal started, week and change with Cabrera, that surprised you? I mean, from my standpoint, if you were to lay out a bell curve of probability, everything that took place is about what I would have expected. It's not necessarily what I would like to have seen them done, but it's what I expected them to do. Trade the rentals for pitching prospects, and that is essentially a quick summary of what the Cardinals did. What is your evaluation?
Yeah, Tim, I am a little bit surprised they didn't move an outfielder.
Yeah.
They could have moved an outfielder. Like you said, the others were rentals. I thought maybe they would have gotten a little better prospect haul than they got. Tekoa Roby is a prospect. I think he falls in number 4 on the Cardinals list. But I think they got one top 10 prospect in other organizations' rankings. You would think Jordan Montgomery could pull a top 10 prospect. You would think Jack Flaherty might be able to pull a top 10 prospect. Now I know they're only rentals; you're only getting them for a couple of months, but they got good numbers of pitchers. I'm just they didn't really ever pull that big time pitching prospect, and quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that they didn't move either Tyler O'Neill or Dylan Carlson. All that trade deadline did was heap on more pressure for this offseason. I mean, this offseason, it's a daunting task to go into an offseason needing 3 starting pitchers. If you only needed 2, that would be a daunting task. They're going to go in needing 3 starting pitchers. That means they got to pull off a couple of big trades and a couple of big free agent signings. And I would have liked to see them get a pitcher that they could, call a starter in 2024, but that just didn't happen. So it just ramps on even more pressure and importance on this offseason now.
So that's one of the things I want to discuss. The mission statement, essentially, that John Mozeliak laid out a couple of weeks ago was this is not going to be a teardown. This isn't going to be a rebuild. This is a team that wants to return to contention in 2024. And my thought process on that was, I wonder why he is saying that. And my reasoning for saying I wonder why he's saying that, because now you are setting a standard and perhaps boxing yourself in on what kind of offers you may receive. Because if some incredible offers come in for take your pick of whomever on the roster, it may mean you're taking a step back for 2024, but increasing the opportunity for a championship in 25 or 26. And by doing that, you already have $100+ million committed next year, even though you're losing Adam Wainwright. And you've now said goodbye to many guys going to Toronto and one to Baltimore and to Texas. You have Matz, Michaelis, Arenado, Contreras, and Goldschmidt that make up $100+ million, and you still only have 40% of your rotation spoken for, even with that number of dollars allocated. And so it strikes me as being difficult to return to championship contention in 2024. Perhaps you can return to National League Central contention in 2024. And so I was surprised by that that mission statement. So I ask you, number one, your thoughts on the reasoning behind the mission statement. Is it as simple as let's keep people activated so they buy tickets? And secondly, how likely it is to return to contention in 2024?
Yeah, Tim, I think part of the reason he said that is because that's what Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado want to hear. I mean, we saw it with Max Scherzer and just Justin Verlander. Once you start telling people about 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, players, especially players on the wrong side of 30, they don't want to hear that. Like, they're feeling pressure to win. Their careers are, in the final stages. And you tell somebody that you're building for 2 years, 3 years down the road, they're going to start looking elsewhere and asking out. And, you have a fan base in St. Louis where you're not really allowed to rebuild in St. Louis. It's kind of like in New York or with the Lakers. They're not allowed to rebuild. And, the Cardinal fans expect a contender on the field next year. They expect a playoff team on the field next year. This is a franchise that's won, winning season 15 years in a row. This is a franchise that's usually in it. Even in their down years, they're still in the fight. I think there's a lot of external pressures there that this organization feels like they have to put a winning team on the field. They have to put a playoff team on the field. It may not be a championship contending team, but it has to at least be one that's fighting for a playoff spot because, that's where the bar is set. Like, that's the bare minimum. And then if you can contend for a championship, that's even better. But I think there's a lot of external pressures on John Mozeliak where he feels like, you can't totally tear this thing down. You can't totally delve into rebuilding because of the pressures in St. Louis to win.
John Denton, MLB.com, our guest here on 101 ESPN. It's Balloon Party, driven by Munganast, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. So speaking of becoming a contender again in 2024, you already said that which John Mozeliak touched on a couple of days ago in his press conference following the deadline, and that is obviously they're going to have to tend to the pitching staff. And it's probably going to be through trades because the teams that were buyers aren't looking to trade a Major League-ready starter because they're looking to win now, and then through free agency. Of course, everything we're doing here is just speculating, but do you see any pitchers out there, whether they're currently going to be under contract next year with somebody or a free agent who you think the Cardinals will target and what makes sense potentially as a dance partner for a trade if that were to be one of the routes they go to get one of these pitchers or two of them for that matter?
Yeah, well, Tim, a guy like Tyler Glasnow, he'll have one more year left on his contract. Like, he's a really good pitcher. Toronto, typically gets away from giving long-term deals. They don't like paying pitchers on the wrong side of 30, which I don't blame them.
You're talking about Tampa Bay, right, with Glasnow, you mean?
Yeah. Tyler Glasnow could be a candidate. The Logan Gilbert kid in Seattle, they could revisit that. A lot of teams aren't going to look to trade those guys. Like Tampa wasn't going to look to trade a pitcher now. Now, they're in the hunt. They're trying to win. You might avoid trading with Tampa because they usually get the best of the other team they trade with. But, maybe that's a guy. Maybe you go after the big fish of Blake Snell this offseason in free agency. Maybe you go after Aaron Nola, but it's going to be expensive. And Cardinal fans need to know now, like, if you go get a pitcher, it's probably going to cost you $200 million or $150 million. And if you trade for a pitcher, it's probably going to cost you Nolan Gorman or Mason Wynn or, you can't go into a trade trying to trade, one of your lower tier players. Like, it's going to be painful. It's going to cost you one or two. It may cost you Nolan Gorman and Brendan Donovan, to get a pitcher from another team. So, I really think the Cardinals have to reevaluate their plan going forward because you're going to have to pay to get pitching. You're going to have to pay in prospects to get pitching. This franchise always has kind of sort of overvalued their own prospects. And
boy, isn't that true?
It's going to cost multiple guys that you really like to get good pitching.
Taking Ohtani out of the equation, just because I think that we'd be being disingenuous to talk about that being realistic. Who do you think they would target free agency-wise?
I think a guy like Aaron Nola would be a good target. This is a franchise that's always had those pitch-to-contact pitchers, depending on the defense. They have stated that more than anything now in this game with no shift, you got to miss bats. You got to have swing and miss. Aaron Nola's that big, tall right-hander that they have always loved. That's the guys they always go after. He's a guy who can give you swing and miss. Blake Snell, I think last year against the Cardinals, he hit 96 miles an hour. It was the fastest he'd ever thrown in his career. He's thrown 97, 98 some this year. His strikeout numbers are way up. Swing and miss is way up. But to get one of those guys, it's going to be $200 million. That'll probably be the starting point. So you got to know going in that you're really going to have to pay for those big-time free agents. But those are two guys that are at the top of the list, no doubt.
So Nola will be 31 in his 2024 season, and Snell will be 31 as well in his 2024 season. Famously, the Cardinals did not see the value with Max Scherzer when he was interested in coming here 8-9 years ago. But John Mozeliak has acknowledged they're going to have to change up their model. Do you think that they would be comfortable allocating that kind of money to pitchers who are in their 30-plus seasons?
Tim, it may be a scenario where you have to give more money in fewer years. The Mets were able to do that with Scherzer and with Verlander, where maybe you, instead of paying $35 million, you pay them $40 million a year, and you get them on shorter term deals. With them being on the wrong side of 30, it would be better to go shorter term, maybe more dollars, but you're still committing a lot of money. This franchise, and rightly so, has been hesitant to give long-term deals to pitchers, on the wrong side of 30. But like you said, the model's got to change, because you can't go into next season with 2 starters under contract and hope for the best, because you got to have 3 starters. And it's, everything that just happened at the trade deadline heaped a lot more pressure onto next offseason.
You got to see Hudson last night. You've seen plenty of Liberatore this year. And I don't know how often you get a chance to see the guys who are pitching, whether it be AA or AAA, if you get a chance at all, John. But of those names that we hear about, you go McGreevy, you go Graceffo, and of course, as I mentioned, Liberatore and Hudson, and now some players that have been acquired from the Blue Jays and Rangers and Orioles. Any of those, if you had to say, okay, I got to take one that I believe will be in that rotation in 2024, or any of those going, yeah, I think that's the guy, because right now Liberatore is trending downward. Certainly Hudson had a great start last night, but that's been hot and cold and hasn't been able to recover from his surgery, but maybe it's starting to trend in a positive direction. What about your observation on that, or the Cardinals' observation on who they could be highest on of those guys inside the organization?
Yeah, I really think that Dakota Hudson could be that guy. I think he could be your 4th or 5th starter. His stuff is good enough. It's just a matter of him not nibbling and believing in himself and trusting his stuff. And, if you look at in his career, he's 19-5 at Busch Stadium. The guy does nothing but win at Busch Stadium. It's a big ballpark. His sinker works well. He flashed a slider last night. He hadn't thrown a slider a lot in lately. I think he got 9 swinging misses with the slider last night. That was a really good pitch for him. Had season-high 7 strikeouts. If he can string together 3 or 4 starts, if he can put together a good run, 3 or 4 starts, I think he may get a qualifying offer. They know what they can get in him. They know he's a good guy. They know he's a great clubhouse guy. He could very well fill one of those spots. If you could get a good run out of him the second half and then realize, hey, we only need 2 starting pitchers now in the offseason, that takes a load of pressure off the organization. So these games matter to Matthew Liberatore. These games matter to Dakota Hudson. Guys, you're trying to lock down spots for next season.
John Denton with us on Thursdays here on 101 ESPN. You can read him on MLB.com. John, always enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
All right, Tim. Take care. Have a good day.
Take it easy, you too. That's John Denton with us here on 101 ESPN. Your thoughts on what he had to say, our Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. And then, of course, you are welcome to leave a mic drop as well. I like that Tyler Glass now. Big fan of that.
It could be great.
That's the first time I had heard reference. Of course, that doesn't mean that that's happening, but you talk about a strikeout guy, man, and Snell's a strikeout guy for that matter as well. The thing is you're going to have competition for Nola, who hasn't been great this year. He's been really a wide delta with his starts. I don't know how closely you follow him. His last start against Pittsburgh, he got lit up, and he's had 5 really rough starts this year. He's carrying a 4.43 ERA. As I mentioned, he'll be 31 next year. Snell is also in that age of 31 But there are going to be multiple teams competing for these players' services. My guess is the Cardinals do get one of those big free agents. I do think that's what will happen. It is going to be a big bet, man. If you think the Contreras thing's a big bet and a potentially problematic one, boy, they got a hit on this one. And then there will be a starter through a trade, and I would gather they will give a Hudson, Liberatore, Graceffo, McGreevy a shot to fill out the rotation. That would be, if I had to wager right now, that's what I think will wind up happening. All right, your thoughts, of course, always welcome here on Balloon Party. Jackson's got the Lil Piddles Angry Beaver Sports Business Daily. It's like Tuesdays with Taylor talking football. I just can't get it.
Yeah.
I just can't get it.
Talking with Tolman.
Eh.
It just happens to fall on Tuesday.
It does. And I got to ignore that part of it. All right, so that's coming up on the other side of the break. Second half of Balloon Party next on 101 ESPN.
This is Action Jackson with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals win last night over the Minnesota Twins. Final score of 7-3. The Cardinals will take on the Twins tonight. First pitch, 6:45 p.m. And last night in the WNBA, the Dallas Wings defeat the Seattle Storm 76-65. Arike Unganwable with 27 points. That was another SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Nice. It's Piddles season. Welcome in.
Hello, everybody.
What do we got here with this little Piddles Angry Beaver sports business review?
Newsletter. It's really, it can be a review as well. You know, it's kind of both, kind of picking hairs. Like, it's the same thing. All right, let's fire it up. Second question here for you, Tim. The NCAA and the NIL.
Why the dramatic pauses?
Well, I had to open my email. The NCAA and the NIL saga is one that I believe will be looked upon later as a very strange time in the world of amateur to professional athletics. The NCAA is currently lobbying to have uniform NIL rules, including a standard NIL contract and registration process, along with more transparency about deals being signed and money being made. This is all well and good, but ultimately state laws hold jurisdiction over what the NCAA wants. The NCAA will continue to lobby for it, while more relaxed states or NIL-friendly states, Missouri being one of them, will try to hold serve. Do you think the NCAA will get its wishes and control the Wild West that is college athletics, or will states continue to police themselves and put themselves in better positions for their state universities?
Well, we're talking many in the South, and that's going to fall more in the we are pro-states' rights, if I had to wager, and I think the NCAA will eventually be broken away from. So my answer would be the latter. I do not think the NCAA is going to win this thing. That is where I am on this. What do you think, Jackson?
Well, yeah, you look at it from a state perspective, like it's good to have your state university be good at sports. I'm sure the people of Alabama would tell you that it's lovely having the Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure
what about Hugh Freeze and War Damn Eagle?
Yeah, that two-head monster, that tandem right there is good for the state. It's good for state revenue. They have more people going to their state universities. I would assume North Carolina feels the same thing in Chapel Hill with basketball. I'm sure that Kansas feels the same thing with Lawrence and Kansas. That is huge. It's huge to have. That's big money is right there. So if it puts them in a better position to have more relaxed NIL rules and this uniform all across the country NIL policy is out there, why would they limit themselves, you know? So that's kind of what the NCAA has gotten themselves into. Absolutely, players should be paid for their name, image, and likeness. It's just difficult right now to police it.
There it is. Action Jackson has given his official perspective on question 2 of the Lil Piddles Sports Business Newsletter. I did it. I did it. I did it. Oh, my God.
You're our champion, Tim.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, you're our champion. All right, an article and awful announcing today both made me sad and reminiscent of days gone by. SportsCenter is fighting for its life.
Is that right?
This is the article I was posted is Fight for Survival with SportsCenter.
Really? What do they say? Do we have some numbers?
Ratings are just kind of down at the moment. I'll continue with this question.
It can be painful watching it. I watch it at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And, like, I can't even imagine what they're paying the people who are doing overnight sports. And I see Linda Cohn there, and I'm like, God, I feel badly for her. You know, she was part of the halcyon days of SportsCenter. Wow. All right, what do we got?
ESPN's flagship show continues to try and remain culturally relevant as social media sites can offer quicker, more condensed highlights, and people can pick and choose their favorite anchors who can deliver short attention span theater. Do you see a show like SportsCenter, something that has been a cultural mainstay for the better part of 2 decades, going the way of the dodo bird? would it behoove ESPN and SportsCenter to try to land some more culturally relevant stars and deliver highlights and focus more on their social media side of things as opposed to the traditional style of delivery? Is the onset of streaming going to make all of this moot, as people don't have the appetite to wait for TV shows when everything else in their life is available on demand?
Well, the answer to the second one is easy and yes. The thing with the first one is getting, like Barstool, which they tried to do a deal with 5 years ago.
Yeah, the Van Talk show.
Right, with Big Cat and PFT Commenter, right?
Yep.
But then you had the Sam Ponder, Dave Portnoy thing. And then you also can get into a spot with those personalities are not necessarily going to stay in line with the business of ESPN that is the NFL, the NBA. In other words, they are going to be apt to say things that they can say on their podcasts that they can't say with Roger Goodell approving, or Jerry Jones, the real commissioner, approving, Adam Silver approving, now Gary Bettman with ESPN being back in business, and Rob Manfred. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the guys can say whatever on Barstool.
Right.
It's kind of the unique spot that people were observing with Pat McAfee and his deal, and that he might have to tighten up his ship. So that's the tough thing. You see what I'm saying? You're trying to balance the relationship you have with these powerhouses in the North American sports, but then you get into the personalities don't necessarily dance. And so you got Stephen A. Smith doing push-ups yesterday with Chris Russo yelling at him. But I mean, Russo, I assume, is in his 60s. Stephen A. Smith's in his 50s. Mm-hmm. And as I observed at the start of the show, they got nothing. So they're debating whether or not Dak Prescott's the guy to lead the Cowboys. And it's August 3rd. And you're just going, my God, you got nothing.
Right.
You can't cast a wide net if you're sports and only sports.
Right.
That's why I do TMA.
Right.
So, you know, that's the reality. And you get a narrow and older audience. And so if you want to make yourself relevant, in particular with younger people, I think you have to get away from the Dan Orlovsky, you know, saying something that Stephen A. Smith is confused by, and then Stephen A. Smith says something that Dan Orlovsky is confused by, and then they just argue. That crap's over.
Yeah.
And as much as I loved SportsCenter, certainly influenced me when I was doing television, without question. Yeah, things change. You know, the train was relevant at one time. The train ran things. The horse racing was relevant at one time. Horse racing ran sports, boxing. Things change. But that doesn't mean a business have to shut down. You have to adapt. So I think their responsibility is to adapt. The tough thing is they're boxed in on the relationships, in particular with the NFL and the NBA.
No doubt. Brief aside, I really love trains. Like,
oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a fun aside.
Yeah, like I would love to just like take a train ride through Central Europe, see the Alps, hang out, have a cup of coffee on the train. It all sounds so lovely.
Train to Herman, but for you it has to be Europe through the Alps?
That would be ideal. The Herman situation, I guess, could be
That's
second
in Missouri,
fiddle.
mid-Missouri.
I'm
You know,
aware.
the common man.
Wine country out there.
Sure, absolutely.
But like a train to Chicago is great. Don't have to deal with traffic. Don't have to deal with the headache of an airport. Super easy. You know, it's really nice. So I'm very pro-train. And I think they should come back into relevancy.
Sure. Well, you ought to acquire Amtrak. I know you're liquid.
Yeah, you know, we're so much in the transportation space as it is that.
Oh, your family's in the transportation space?
Yeah. We're a blimp.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you
Purveyors.
guys were big in the blimp business.
Yeah, it's a huge comeback in 2026.
Is that right?
Yeah,
You
we'll
guys
be
are targeting 2026 as a big year for the blimp.
Everyone's going to travel by Zeppelin.
Might have to short that. Okay, what else do we have here in this Little Piddles Sports Business Newsletter, brought to you by the wonderful people at Angry Beaver, where if you say Piddles, you get $5 off a pizza. It's unbelievable what's going on.
Well, the last part I would want to say on the SportsCenter thing is that you have all these people who are on social media who are really good at delivering highlights or commenting on sports and stuff, who are really great. And I guess
Who are the
SportsCenter,
people who are great at doing highlights on social media?
John Boy, in terms of baseball, has done a great thing with lip reading, and I think that's really great.
We had a good one with Lance Lynn recently.
Really good. I really enjoyed that. And then there's these guys on TikTok called the Broadcast Boys. There's these guys from New York. They're really funny. And so, like, I think that would be great for ESPN to, like, bring them on to, like, do, like, hey, watch these guys run our Instagram for a day. But if you're also these guys, like, you're like, do we want to go be involved with a network who might say you can't say this, you can't say that, or we control our own destiny?
And then they probably own their own business,
That's
and you
the
don't
thing.
want to do it.
Right. That's the thing, is controlling your own destiny. Now, I think ESPN's in the right headspace by bringing someone on like Pat McAfee, but I think that if things don't go well.
McAfee continues to own it, and he's licensing it.
Sure.
Am I correct?
I believe that is the case.
Okay.
Yes, which is a different than him being a straight ESPN employee.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think, but how many people out there can have that kind of deal? You know, how many people can license out their stuff to ESPN?
It's all about how many dollars you bring to the table.
Sure.
That is the way for it to become relevant again. And I'm sure they're attempting to figure it out. But yeah, that's the tough spot that you're in.
Right.
Like if you're Big Cat and PFT commenter, why would you want it? You don't care. You don't get. It's like, you know, I was saying to you actually on the podcast, Tim McKernan show. I'd really recommend listening to this week's edition, by the way. And I said, when I started doing local TV in 2000, it was a big deal. But to you, at 25 years old, that kind of sounds like a joke.
Right.
That local TV was, and it was a bigger deal even when I was growing up around here in the 1980s. You had people making, you know, I don't know, about $1 million a year, but well into the six figures. And not everybody, but a decent amount. And those days are over. So things change, but you have to be able to adapt. The issue is, for the people who could help mobilize an audience to ESPN, many now own their own thing and wouldn't want to be in a spot where they become an employee where you can just get whacked if they have a bad quarter, or if Disney is looking to impress investors. And so they go, oh, we got to cut the big salaries here. So why would you sign up for that? You don't need it.
Right.
You make plenty of money yourself and you have independence.
Yep.
If you can't give them independence, then, you know, that's going to be tough to bring those people on board. Your thoughts are welcome on the topic. 314-399-9646. It's the Little Piddles Sports Business Newsletter presented by Angry Beaver. More where that came from coming up in the final segment of Balloon Party here on 101 ESPN. All right, Jackson, let's finish strong here. I mean, we only have 5 minutes to do it. It's the Little Piddles Sports Business Newsletter presented by Angry Beaver, and I want to hear what you got. I've enjoyed the questions so far.
Well, thanks, Tim. Here we go. Final question for you. A story that broke a few days ago has me fascinated as it seems to be in the headlines more and more often as of recently. Iowa State quarterback Hunter Decker has been charged with gambling on college football games, including a Cyclones game versus Oklahoma State.
Why do you sound like you're reading a hostage statement? There's just no inflection. You notice that?
It's kind of somber. So I feel like my tone should match
I see what you're saying.
The nature of the story.
So like you can't do a sing-songy newscaster voice to the story?
I wouldn't like to. Here, I'll read it.
Yeah, see how it sounds. Let's just take a listen.
A story that broke yesterday has me fascinated.
You're sharpshooting me, and I feel it's very passive-aggressive.
Well, I was hamming it up.
Social media shade.
I was hamming it up.
Social media shade. It's like
yeah.
Matt, is that his name?
Matt.
I thought that was the guy's name.
Hunter Decker?
Perfect. He goes by Matt.
Right. Okay. Here we go. I'll split the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. The story that broke yesterday has me fascinated as it seems to be in the headlines more and more often as of recent.
Yeah.
Pretty good?
Right there. Yeah. I mean, it's not over the top.
Yeah.
There's some inflection.
Yeah. Over the top with Sylvester Stallone.
1985. Winner takes it all. Loser takes the fall. Fight till the beginning of the end. Sammy Hagar? Maybe that was 87. Somebody will check on that. We'll have more on that tomorrow.
Iowa State quarterback Hunter, a.k.a. Matt Decker, has been charged with gambling on college football, including a Cyclones game versus Oklahoma State. Do you think with the growth of legal gambling and players getting a taste of what world-changing money is with the NIL, these types of stories will become more and more in our mainstream news?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I want to give you more. The question warrants more, but my answer is rather direct, and that is, I do think it's going to become more common, and I don't think this is the last time we hear it.
Yeah, and I of course have been in high school just a little bit more recently than you have been, but when I would go to high school basketball tournaments for the AAU, they would make us watch this video about how you can't gamble in college. Like if you get to college athletics, how you can't gamble. And I assume now it is like a 2 or 3 day course about like telling you what the impact is of what gambling can be like if you're a college football player or college basketball player, any college sport. But it is so easy to do now that it's such like a tough thing, and college and professional sports, at that matter, are benefiting a lot from gambling. So it's kind of talking out of same sides, different mouth, other way around.
No, I followed it, even though it might not have made sense.
Not even a lick. I'm sorry, folks.
The thing is, I mean, you can compartmentalize it. You know, you can do spots for take your pick of whatever thing it is, and as long as you're not lying to an audience and saying, so you can be in business without necessarily participating.
For sure.
And so, hey, gambling's part of it, but you, as somebody participating in the contest, can't gamble on it.
Right.
But I think because, unlike, say, professional athletes, where most are making a ridiculous amount of money, that's not the case for most college athletes. And so that temptation is greater at that level than at the professional level. And therefore, I think it is going to be an increasing story, because if you are a quarterback, you certainly have much higher impact on the game than an offensive lineman. That's not to downplay the value of offensive lines, but as one offensive lineman, I guess you could just miss a block completely and the guy lit up. Yeah, and a quarterback can throw picks or whatever the case might be. You saw that with the Alabama baseball coach a few months ago. And the story that went on that he was betting against his team.
Right. I almost feel like that would yeah, that's tough. But
that's where you go into a totally different world. All right, Michael Gersh is going to be on with BK and Ferrario coming up at 11:30. That is up next for Action Jackson. I'm Tim McKernan. This has been Balloon Party, driven by Mungan, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN.